and using the fact that the EU requires unanimity for some of these important decisions to make sure that, just one of 27 members can hold up the agenda that the other 26 want to enact. And so I think here at the EU level, there's a real idea that if he is gone, that sort of obstruction might ease a little bit. And so that this is very touched here.
Roxanne, you smiled at that last observation of Nina Khrushcheva, that the Kremlin and the White House want the same person to win this.
Well, I think it's looking at it from the Middle East, and particularly from Iran's perspective.
Why everybody's acting surprised.
It's interesting. I think it's not as though they're vested in Orban, but the idea that the United States is sending their vice president to try to sway this election and is accusing the EU of obstruction and influence, I think just simply feeds into their view that the United States is extremely unreliable and doesn't tell the truth. And so I think as Vance then goes on to Pakistan in order to speak with the Iranians, it only underscores their increasing and continuing distrust of the administration and its tactics. Iran speaks a lot, the United States economic role, and I think they're very worried in Iran, similar influence and buying of a bargaining situation is going to have a play here.
Gina, what about the war in Ukraine in this context? I mean, if Mr. Orban does lose and Peter Magyar takes over, how much difference does that make to that conflict, do you think?
I think the most immediate impact here is that we are kind of widely expecting in Brussels that if Mr. Orban loses, the 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine will become unstuck. And so essentially it will just be a cash infusion that allows Ukraine to fight another day or many more days. And so I don't think that's necessarily a war, but it will certainly give Ukraine more staying power. And so I think that the path for Ukraine just becomes a bit easier if Mr. Orban is gone. And that is one of the big reasons that this election is so central here.
The other point Nina Khrushcheva and I raised, Roxanne, was other countries in Europe where elections are drawing near. And I mentioned France, but there are other examples. So again, Hungary being watched for all sorts of different reasons by a lot of its neighbors.
Yes, and I think there's also the concern that in many ways the EU represents an institution of weight within the structure of international law. And I think overall we're seeing that international law and the faith in institutions more generally is being undercut, particularly by the United States. And I think that's something that's very, very concerning, not just in Europe, but elsewhere, but also very much in Europe. And this election is going to be critical for that.
You're listening to Weekend from the BBC World Service. Now, before this week, the last time humans orbited the moon was in 1972 as part of the Apollo 17 mission. It was also the last time humans walked on the moon. On the 14th of December that year, they began their return to Earth.
99, proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector grid. X-Lock. Pitch over. There you have good thrust.
Moon visits stopped after this for a number of reasons, including high costs and general American satisfaction at having beaten the Soviet Union in the so-called space race of that era. But in 2019, NASA unveiled its 5-stage Artemis program. The idea of Artemis has been to pave the way for a crewed mission to Mars. There have been other motives as well, such as a wider desire to utilize lunar ice and minerals. In April 2023, NASA announced its Artemis astronauts, and then on the 1st of April this year, after NASA solved a few initial technical problems, the green light for the launch was given, and at 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time, the crew blasted off.
And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. this next great voyage begins.
Well, after getting adjusted to their new environment in space, the astronauts took a good look at planet Earth. It led to these reflections, starting with Artemis Commander Reed Wiseman.
There was a moment about an hour ago where Mission Control Houston reoriented our spacecraft as the sun was setting behind the Earth. And I don't know what we all expected to see in that moment, but you could see the entire globe from pole to pole. You could see Africa, Europe, and if you looked really close, you could see the northern lights. It was the most spectacular moment, and it paused all four of us in our tracks.
We just experienced incredible views of planet Earth and seeing the entire planet out the window in one pane. Knowing that we're about to have some similar views of the moon in that same way is definitely getting me more excited for it.
Well, the first thing I would say is trust us. You look amazing. You look beautiful. And from up here, you also look like one thing. You know, Homo sapiens is all of us, no matter where you're from or, you know, what you look like.
The last voice you heard there, Artemis 2 pilot Victor Glover, before him, Christina Cook and Reed Wiseman. And as of a few hours ago, the four astronauts are safely back on Earth. Their Orion capsule splashed down into the Pacific Ocean after 10 days in space.
Yay.
Here's the moment it happened.
Integrity splashdown, sending post-landing command now.
Splashdown confirmed.
Copy splashdown, waiting on VLDR.
Splashdown confirmed at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time.
Well, listening to all of that, Sabina Alistair, amateur astronomer who's been following the mission very closely from the moment of liftoff, normally based in Hawaii. She's on the line from the Philippines. Sabina, welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Great talking to you on this wonderful day.
How was splashdown for you?
It was very exciting. I am here on a trip, and there were people here from the US, Australia, Philippines, and we were all very, very excited to watch the splashdown and keeping our fingers crossed that everything runs as well as possible. And it didn't disappoint. So it was very, very cool to see the astronauts come back.
What do you think it's done for wider international interest and enthusiasm for space exploration?
I think it's done a lot, actually, because like you mentioned earlier, it was a very diverse crew going up there, so a lot of people could see themselves in it. The mission was organized, driven by NASA, but also with major contributions from other international agencies like ESA and the Canadian Space Agency. So a lot of excitement, 50 years later to finally go back to the moon. We see it in our own astronomy club, right? We're getting schools and scout clubs reaching out for star parties and star information and moon and lunar sort of sessions about what happened with Artemis. So there's a lot of excitement in the community.
I have two guests listening to you closely. Roxanne, has this captured your imagination?
Well, it is very exciting, and it's great that it was such a feel-good story when I totally agree with the astronaut that said we are all of one, we are all sapiens, and yet we are so divided. There's so much conflict. So it's wonderful to step back and hear the longer context.
That message of sort of harmony has been one that's been quite pronounced, hasn't it?
It has, and we needed that.
We can see why. Gina, what's been in your mind as this 10 days has unfolded?
Shining ball of blue. We can call on him.
Yeah, go on.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. I think that it's just a moment of great uncertainty, and I think I'm sorry, the 10 days. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was just wondering what was through your mind as you followed this whole mission as it unfolded.
Yeah, I just think it's been an incredible moment. We've been dealing with so much uncertainty on a global stage, and we've been dealing with so many sort of sad news stories. And I think it's been really interesting to get to watch this sort of exciting, scientific exploration and the potential for future moon landings and all of the great things that are coming out of this. And so I think, from an American perspective, this has been a really exciting news story to watch and a really interesting one as we kind of look toward the future.
And Sabina, on that future, as a final thought, what do you hope follows this?
I hope more missions. As you know, I think Artemis 3 and 4 are scheduled for the next couple of years. I hope to see people set foot on the moon again during my
See y'all next
lifetime.
time.
I wasn't there when we first went to the moon. So, and I do hope this excitement worldwide continues to unite people instead of tearing them apart, because, our planet is just one and so small and fragile when you see it from the moon that we really need to be working together to reach these goals for humanity.
Well, listen, thank you for coming on the
See y'all
program.
later.
Sabina Alistair, amateur astronomer, who's been doing that mission very closely.